None of the speech analytics systems today that I see, Nice, Nexidia, CoreMiner, nobody, they're just not measuring the right things. And it drives customers crazy.
Hi, and welcome to Credit Shift. My name is Paul Sweeney. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Webio. This podcast will be about how to embrace the digital future of credit and collections and all things AI and technology. Join us for the conversations that matter around credit and collections. My guest is Andrew Moorhouse, founder and director of consulting at Alitical, an advanced analytics firm focused on combining the latest in AI and machine learning with behavioral analytics to eke out those customer experience gains. Previous to this, Andrew was a conversation specialist and contact center conversational AI lead at Deloitte. And for many years, he was director of insight and data analytics with Capita. When the opportunity arose to interview Andrew, I just jumped at it. Andrew, welcome to the Credit Shift.
Thank you, Paul.
Why don't you just maybe talk to us a little bit about the type of work you do these days, maybe especially in the area of digital and all things digital transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'm a self-styled conversation scientist. I have a couple of academic publications behind me. And what I really love is diving down into the minutiae of human conversation and, in sales or customer experience, figuring out what is it that the top performers do differently. So there's a contact center agent. Or if you're building I know you do some predictive modeling with your business. What is it that drives Net Promoter Score detractors, NPS detractors, or low CSAT scores? And that's really fun because you then come across a whole bunch of customer utterances, which are implicit dissatisfaction. So sentiment isn't sufficient. People say, I've waited at home all day now for my shopping on my engineer delivery. They're really infuriated, but that's never picked up by this tool. So what I love doing is diving down into the minutiae and helping you figure out what's going on, root cause analysis of FCA complaints, that kind of stuff. So I'm a bit of a geek, but, I'm quite comfortable in my role. And you mentioned, digital transformations. It's a bit of a catch-all term, really. And I don't necessarily like that term, especially because it just means so many different things to different people. So is it digital transformation, taking little words from a catalogue to very.co.uk? Well, it is. Is it sticking a chatbot on a website? Don't know. Is it, what exactly is it building a banking app? Probably, but it just has such a broad title that I think, I'm not saying it's meaningless. I need to be guarded with my language, but, what I focus on really is conversational AI, implementation of chatbots correctly, or, lessons learned or where people are really going wrong. And, there's a burgeoning desire to move to voice AI. So, people want to rip out their IVR, these little menu-driven thing, disposition codes, and put in an AI bot, really, for full resolution or triage to the right place. I mean, triage is a different topic. No one's really talking about that. And maybe something we can dive into today. I think we had a little chat, if I talk to operational leaders and say, when people phone your bank or your contact center in 10 years' time, will they speak to a robot or a human? Invariably, the answer is, well, they'll speak to a robot. And then you say, okay, so great, what's the plan? You go, I don't know. So I think that roadmap of how to move from an IVR, often with hundreds of tentacles that haven't been mapped for 20 years, outsourced components of an IVR authentication. People don't want to touch that, but they know they'll get left behind if they don't make this full transition. But people, enterprise organizations haven't yet really grasped how to align everything and have a proper seamless journey. We can dive into some of this stuff. We can go anywhere you want with this. So
yeah, sure. I was fascinated. I think you're right in terms of digital transformation is a hold-all phrase for going digital, for being online, for being internet first, for being data first. And it does hold a lot of baggage inside it that you're kind of meant to be able to unpick at will. So I think that's an interesting point. For myself, the digital transformation, I think it's the transformation bit that's forgotten. If you do the same thing just now with a digital interface, then it's I think they call it paving the cow path. You're just putting the technology where your old processes were. So now you have a new technology and an old process, which means you get a new version of your old process. And I think that what fascinates me is companies that are able to say, well, if everything changes and goes digital, what happens next? Like what are the opportunities that open up that maybe would have been even possible to think about before everything was digital? And I think that what I'm trying to find like examples of, I think just to go bizarre for a second, there's 100 million kids now speaking with the little AI assistant in Snapchat. And that Snapchat assistant can be set up as your friend. So you can chat to your little digital friend and build up a relationship with them and complain to them and share your worries with them and whatever it is. And you could kind of go, well, there are services now where you can have like therapy, cognitive therapy. You can have some lower form of counseling, being able to talk your way through a problem, have that service understand, the way you speak to yourself and help you change the way you speak to yourself and get outcomes that were not possible because not everyone can afford therapy. And so in that respect, you've now got a brand new service, a brand new mental health service available for millions of people that would never have had it. So I think that that's kind of transformative for mental health if it could ever be made work. Now, it might be the exact wrong way to implement the technology, but the point is that you're now able to transform a service that because it's digital. And I think that companies often don't reach for that next level of what happens next if you've got everything going digital. And the thing, Andrew, that really kind of, maybe if I just bring us back a second, one of the things that really grabbed my attention was we're here many years now with live chat solutions and people going, live chat is, it's a little round button on the bottom of a billion websites. How good is it, and what's happening? And you wrote an article called, I think it was "The Death of Live Chat,"
yes.
and you threw up a bunch of really interesting concerns. I was just wondering if you could maybe revisit some of those for me, and maybe we could just tease some of them out.
Yeah, of course. I mean, just to before I dive into that, just to build on your point of the counseling bot. In the very early 80s, I think 82, 83 was pretty much the first chatbot that ever existed. And that was a counseling bot. It didn't have any AI intelligence. It would just respond with, why do you feel like this? Tell me more. Why? What is going on for you today? And people loved it. Of course, it just, after a while, it's just asking me a varied set of the same utterances. But I think as a use case, it has the potential to be really, really significant. But I think what also you would need in there are, again, we talk about triage, the right triage protocol. So if someone says, these utterances, I'm beside myself, I'm at my wit's end, I just don't know what to do, you need somewhere for a human intervention. Because if if you have 1 million kids, as you said, or 10, how many kids was it? No.
It was 100 million.
100 million.
Yeah.
No. If 0.01% of them are feeling low and suicidal, it would be a disservice not to capture that. And, there are, I think there are huge gains to be made in these counseling areas. But in terms of the death of live chat, it's, if you look at the highest available picture, and I did some work with one of the tech companies, and together we analysed just over 200 big enterprise phones. We analysed 8 billion phone calls, gigantic amount. And what's quite interesting is over the last 3 years, call volumes have not declined. In the biggest enterprise firms who've spent tens of millions on self-service, automation, apps, call volumes at best have plateaued, but in 95% of these firms, 96 hours, call volumes are increasing, not exponentially, but they're going up 4, 5, 6 to 8%. So there's something utterly broken when I'm spending, as an enterprise, millions and millions and millions. Publicly, Bank of America has spent $125 million on its Erica chatbot, which is one of the best out there. But call volumes haven't dropped. So there's something fundamentally broken. And there's all of this rhetoric from the tech vendors, which is, meet your customer in their channel of choice. So there's this omni-channel madness, or omni-shambles, I would call it. But if you've got banking fraud and you message them on Twitter, Facebook Messenger, you can't resolve it. Ironically, if you have bank fraud in UK at least, certainly the top UK 9, tier 1 banks are 9 in the UK. You message any of them on their chat app, so chatbot, which then escalates to a human. You can't address fraud. They just go, oh, well, sorry about this, you need to call. And I did some work with one bank, 35.5% of all detractors couldn't ever have that specific intent, not fraud, but their request or their intent resolved on that channel. So, and these were things like, ATM dispute, direct debit indemnity, fraud. I've tried your new fancy paying cash-in machine and it messed up. So there were all of these things. And then there's some messy, complex things like ISA consolidation. That's just a bit messy for agents. So then they would push you back to a different channel. Oh, I can't answer. You need to check with the providers. So I think there's a fundamental problem where people have just, I want to be the first in the world of conversational AI. I've just bolted on a chatbot. Didn't really think things through. So the chatbot, again, if you look at a particular, I will do some banking examples, so that's your audience. There's a tier 1 UK bank I know. It has 110 intents within its chatbot that it can recognize. On the IVR, there are 180 disposition codes. So voice sits very separately to the digital team. In fact, the digital team once referred to the voice team as the analog analysts. So really, massive size. But then, so I did some counting, and you look at the banking app and on the website, and there are 410 different self-service journeys, right? So here's the problem. You've got your telephony, your digital chatbot, based by a quite rude digital team. Then you've got a separate team who've developed the self-serve journey. None of them are lined up, right? So it's just fundamentally broken because people sit in these really, really siloed teams. One big telco media enterprise, about $20 billion revenue. I don't want to say the name. They just turned off what they had. They had a chatbot which escalated to live agents. They just couldn't handle the volume. They would have needed to hire another 800 agents just to handle this overflow volume. They just went, just turned off. And this company is a real exemplar of self-serve deflection. So they're absolutely brilliant at that. Three years ago, they turned off their chatbot entirely. Airlines, again, famously two major, one UK low cost, one transatlantic airline. They've just turned off their WhatsApp entirely with any agent escalation because the resolution rates and the time taken for resolution was just too great. So when you look at the vendor marketing propaganda, you will see we can reduce call volumes by 30 or 40% to go. Each night, well, if you got a bank with 14 million calls, 60% of that, when I've generally looked, 65% of those are not banking transactions, literally like move money, make a payment, right? And there's a spurious rhetoric around, now you've bought our conversational AI product, only the complex calls will reach your call center. That's not happened at all. So those numbers haven't changed. Transactional calls, people phoning telephone banking or phoning a human to make a payment, they're not using a banking app. So there's a whole bunch of spurious vendor rhetoric. Enterprise firms, one energy company, you can WhatsApp them and it says, our agents are very busy. We hope to reply within 5 working days. Look at it's a separate energy company, and this is owned by marketing. This is the disconnect because you've got digital marketing teams, operational teams, telephony teams, and you have they put out an innocuous advert. This particular energy gas company also offers like a boiler protection and repair service. So marketing put out an advert to say, hey, we can come and fix your boiler. It garnered 7,300 customer comments, visible public comments. And the marketing team who sit in Liverpool have no chance of answering that deluge. And I did some preliminary analysis. I just built this little bot that pulled off all the comments, public comments, and just did some segmentation. 22% of these were people saying, hey, I've got no heating. And so the entire customer contact strategy is just fundamentally broken. And what's needed, and again, it doesn't really exist today. It needs this orchestration now. So if you imagine you're a conductor in front of an orchestra, the single best place for resolution of that is here, and the teams, particularly this omni-channel team, it's just added complexity and expense. Because if it was working, inbound volumes wouldn't be going up. And, maybe in some companies, if you look at, in this public, so Tesco, for example, their call volumes did go up from about 10 million to 16 million during COVID. But that's because they doubled the size of their online shopping business in COVID. So you go, well, that's fair enough, right? But that's quite an anomaly. Almost all companies, they're not growing 10, 20% per year CAGR. But today, just conversational AI chatbots just are failing. And I think over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see some real significant failures with attempts at voice AI. People are a bit more reluctant, companies far more risk averse to start trying, using robots on the voice channel and ripping out the IVR. But we're gonna see some real interesting failures, and a few people will get it right. But there's definitely a methodology and some basics that I think are being overlooked today in that field.
You ended there my prompt, so I'll maybe lead to the next part by saying it'd be great to hear what some of those basics are for getting things right. But based on your Death of Live Chat post there on LinkedIn, some of the things that you were pointing out were hilarious if they weren't so damaging.
Oh, really? I can't remember what I wrote.
So it was my favorite one is when you're ghosted by the service provider. They just 1.7% of them just said we're kind of not going to resolve this, and we're considering this conversation over, and we just ghost you from there. I thought that was...
it's horrendous. I mean, I know we had to reschedule this because I was halfway through moving house and I didn't have electricity or broadband. I didn't have electricity at one point, which was in fact, I've moved into this house and it's a rental. So this rental, the previous tenants had one provider for electricity and one for gas, and it's just been. And then they had this horrible gas card meter thing. So I don't know, card meter, but they hadn't paid the bill or something. But the electricity meter was on a pay-as-you-go thing. So I was trying to, I could have phoned them, but I also quite like prodding and poking these systems to see if they...
Sure.
This particular provider, I don't know if they'd acquired a separate pay-as-you-go company, but they were utterly siloed. And so you'd start a conversation, you'd go your manual authentication, which is crazy, right? That you shouldn't be doing that manually with a human. And then they go, oh, you're on this pay-as-you-go meter. I'll need to transfer you across. So I sit there, 15 minutes, I was just giving up. I'll come back to it in a bit. Because you'd think that it would stay open. Anyway. And then you'd see a message, because you haven't replied for 3 minutes, this chat is now closed. So now I'd have to go again to the non-pay-as-you-go team back through this thing. So I was literally ghosted. And I wasn't deliberately trying to break it. I tried 3 times. I just gave up. The pain of this. So I've got all the screen grabs, so there might be an article there one day.
The other ones were, just like you're saying, premature chat ending was something like 19%, security fail, escalation fail, ownership shift, or channel shift, that you were probably in the wrong channel for getting the thing concluded in the first place. Like you were saying, you're in a fraud conversation. Why am I doing this through this channel? It's not appropriate. And it just seemed to be an example of the kind of joined up thinking that this isn't nuclear physics. Like you should be able to plan this out and go, well, this is a logical progression of this conversation. This is just on your logout session control there is something that I bet you if you looked at a bunch of vendors and asked them, can I alter that session length there based on conversational context? Like for security, I want it for one length. For FAQs, I wanted a different length. You go, no, that's just not the level of control that we have here. It's like,
yeah. And even, I use the term channel shift, right? And it's, I think the data is 35.5%. So you go through the chatbot, it failed. It escalates to a human, and then the human goes, yeah, I can only apologize. So there's like some trite empathy, it's false empathy, which is definitely not your customer experience savior. So you got some false empathy. Oh, I'm just so sorry. The only thing I can say is you have to do this for me. So channel shift is like an innocuous marketing term. This is failure, contact demand failure, and forced channel shift. So, I think from now on, I'm going to use the term forced channel shift, because channel shifts, 35% channel shift. Oh, well, we're at 33% last month. No, it's an absolute travesty that people are going through this route. And again, this is the point of triage, this conductor at the front. As soon as someone says, hey, I've got fraud, I've got an ATM dispute, and this is where we'll see this over the next 3 to 5 years, people getting it right with large language models. Not just GPT, whatever, but, you can use BERT from Google, or any of these things. Semantic similarity. So again, in the banking example, it is public, and you should research this. Maybe we can put it on. I've got the screen grab. We can pop it on screen. It's a bit of a disservice to PayPal, but it's funny. So some guy in America went, hey, PayPal, I've just been scammed. And the PayPal bot goes, brilliant. And obviously, they've since fixed that because it went around the houses as like a bit of an internet meme or something. But so if you type in PayPal, chatbot, I've been scammed.
But I would jump in there, Andrew, and say the one of the things that I was saying last week to Brett Kinsella in VoiceBot AI is that large language models are becoming this kind of disambiguation front end. They are like a session manager, so that when you enter a conversation, you should be able to fairly reliably be able to triage that conversation and figure out, is it a fraud, like you're saying? Is it a simple balance inquiry? Is it something more complicated? And then within that, you should be able to understand this is the type of conversation that's resolvable in this channel, therefore progress as you go. Or this is going to need a channel shift. How are we going to set that up so that it's the best possible experience for that person, however that is?
What I don't see today is people using these tools to let's call it semantic similarity is my preferred phrase. So, I've been scammed, I've been robbed, I've been done over, I've been fleeced, I've been hoodwinked. No, nobody says hoodwinked, but maybe I do. Your model should know and classify that intent as fraud. So at least the banks I know, none of them are doing this today. None of them. Because the Python coders and the data science team, whilst they understand the tech, they don't really understand the business requirements. And the business isn't very good at articulating what they really need. And then your conversation designers who are brilliant never get a JavaScript coder to do a conversation design. But your linguists who are doing conversation design are brilliant, but they sit in a very defined box and they're told, do the conversation flow, in dialogue flow, whatever, for this very specific intent. And again, it's the upfront stuff. And this is a bandwidth issue. It's easily solvable. The technology exists. It's just that no one's properly thinking of this stuff. And if they are, they can't get people to move from the little silo, well, this is my day job, and get them in some proper cross-functional teams. Like how do we actually apply it? And my preferred term is intent-level triage and fix this. So if you look at UPS, for example, where's my parcel? It's probably no surprise. That's a huge story. It's about 35% of UPS inquiries, right? Which is no surprise. Where's my parcel? But there are 50 versions of Where's My Parcel with all the edge cases. And this is something, again, trying to get some fancy language in here, but I would call this intent level orchestration. So if someone goes, hey, my parcel's supposed to be delivered today, is it still en route? Now, if you message UPS Canada through Facebook Messenger, Twitter, their app, their website, as long as you're authenticated or whatever the various myriad channels existing, you doesn't matter where you start, you get a link, and I think this is a future, and people don't get this. You get a link to an Uber style app. Here's your little UPS brown lorry coming along. Perfect. But so that's one intent. I think there's like a little API lookup, one shot API lookup, which says, is their parcel due for delivery today? So there's a bit of, some good intelligence, because again, people aren't doing this properly. If it's, hey, you allegedly left my parcel with a neighbor, my neighbor Bob doesn't know where you've left it, or my neighbor Bob can't find the parcel. That's a very different intent. So there's a different resolution, because the agent needs to phone the UPS driver and go, hey, did you leave it? Did you chat to Bob? Did you write his name down? Okay. And then the agent owns that to resolution. So they'll say to the customer, hey, I'm going to need to make some phone calls, but I guarantee personally, I'm going to fix this for you. Give me 30 minutes because I need to check with the driver. As soon as I get an answer, I'm coming back to you, but I'm coming back to you within 30 minutes. Don't worry. Perfect. So the resolution is different for each intent. And you can't just go, lost parcel, here's the triage. Again, 40, 50 nested intents, like little things. And this is a very, very burgeoning effort, again, of people in the kind of digital AI conversation design industry who are starting to go, what we're doing today is just garbage, right? Let's rethink conversational AI entirely. So AT&T in America, UPS Canada, Bank of America are going because they have the funds and the bandwidth. So what you've got to do is pretty painful. First you've got to unify the intent taxonomy. Now that's just jargon language, but essentially you've got to call everything the same. So your IVR, disposition codes, your intents from the digital team, your self-service option, you all need to call them the same thing. And there are probably 4,000 intents if you're looking at edge cases. And then you need people from marketing, operations, digital team, voice to come together and go, what is this? You need to define the single best place for resolution. So the UPS example, is I think quite an easy one for people to get their head around. And then you need to put in the right tech where you can triage these things, so the right level of, again, intent level orchestration, which is not journey orchestration. That's a marketing thing. Intent level orchestration is essentially, again, that UPS example of, right, where are we sending this thing? If this is a customer who's phoned 3 times today saying, hey, here's a good example. In the UK, we have DWP, Department of Work and Pensions, right? And they have, so public, 60 million phone calls per year. It's staggering. This is the people, these are the company who do disability payments and living allowance payments and child maintenance payments, job seekers allowance payments and universal credit payments. So 19 different service lines of payments. Over a third of their calls, 20 million phone calls, where people go, where's my money? I'm supposed to get paid today. Am I going to get paid today? And they have nothing. Yeah. What they have is this antiquated system from 10 years ago called Next Available Agent. So everybody is racked up in a queue for Next Available, and the queue times are an hour. And guess what? That line can't talk to that line. Oh, child maintenance, so you're going to phone again. So it's, where's my payment? 20 million phone calls. And it's this antiquated system. But if there's let's call them a vulnerable customer, I mean, I've spoken with the directors there. There's someone stood on the edge of a bridge with the children in their arms saying, I've got no money for food. I can't feed my children. If you don't pay me, I'm jumping. Well, guess what? They're in an hour-long queue with no triage. So, and I won't mention anything about gambling firm. I listened to 30 suicide threat calls once. It was horrific. No triage at all. Yeah. So there's a real need. So there's vulnerable customer triage. But also, if you think about this DWP example, if someone's already phoned 3 times, where's my money? You don't want to talk to them. You say, hey, so the single best resolution for me, at least the enterprise firm, is here's a self-service page, here's a portal. It will again tell you the information. We've already told you your payment will be received by 6 p.m. today. There is one company, I won't say where it is. They've decided they don't want to talk to customers who want to complain because it's zero value to the agent, high value to the customer. So there's a little 4x4 model exercise. I'm sure you know this irritant value matrix thing. It's a pretty interesting exercise to go through, but rightly so. They've decided we don't want to talk to ranting customers, so they go to a complaint form online, which has the right triage built in, and it's an email confirmation. Then they route it to the appropriate team to deal with. So they've decided that's how they want to operate. I agree, actually. I know a lot of people, you got to talk to these customers. Oh, really? You got 14 million calls a year and, 6% are complaining, and each call length is 100 seconds AHT. You might not want to talk to them.
It does depend, right, on the business and the type of organization you are. But just to go back to your point, and maybe I should have teed up at the top of this interview, Andrew, like you and I, we don't have a business relationship together. You're not a supplier or a consultant to Webio, so you've got
no agenda apart from having a nice conversation, really.
No agenda in this conversation at all, which is why it's great. So one of the things that we're big on here at Webio is this triage in the front end and getting the customer identified and at the intent level. And we train our own intents. We have our own NLU. We've trained our own custom LLM and we integrate these together to figure these things out, right? So it's all trained on your real conversations, what your real customers are asking you about. And so the question of, hey, I've got 2 kids, I can't feed them today, this is the end of the line for me. That kind of conversation should be captured really quickly and escalated really quickly and dealt with really like in the most expeditious fashion possible. And so figuring out what falls into those categories of different types of vulnerabilities, different types of urgency, etc. That next step of what happens next is a part of the routing and then the queuing and then which agents get it and what they can do next and what they're advised to do. So you've got to follow the path the whole way through for each specific type of problem. And that isn't a magic button. Like, that is training, that is looking at the data, that is analyzing conversations, that is retraining intents, relaunching models. It's an effort. It's a big commitment to really get there. The thing that gets maybe to that transformation bit is where you say, where you were before is you've got, let's just pick that big number, right? 10 million people in queues with waiting times and the next available agents. And you don't know anything about their needs. You don't know anything about their concerns until they're activated, right? And an agent is speaking and gathering that information. But if you're able to gather that information up front and then say, okay, let's get them in front of the right agent. And again, to talk about that empathy bit, saying, I'm really sorry you've had a bad experience today isn't really empathy. But when it's I think that thinking about AI being empathetic AI, I think it's a category error. Like, AI cannot be empathetic with you, nor should it be, but it should be able to understand that this is what you're saying, this is your situation, we got that, we're confirming that we understand that. Now we're going to get a person and we're going to solve this problem. And so when you were saying about that agent with the UPS or the FedEx who said, okay, look, I'm going to phone Bob, I'm going to phone the driver, I'm going to figure out. I think that's fundamentally different when a person is giving another person a promise that your concern matters to me, and I'm promising you that I'm going to follow this down to the end. I think that's a fundamentally different experience. The flip side of that is if you trusted the system to say, like, where's my package? And it told you where the package was and it said it was going to be 10 minutes and it was 10 minutes. What happens is eventually you just track the package and then eventually you stop tracking the package because you know that it's going to arrive pretty much in around when they said it would. So I think the experiences end up being different, and what those experiences need to be in detail really can be quite simple. Like, how do you tell someone their package is late effectively, like, and without blowing up the situation, versus, those very, very difficult conversations with people where, they're in a very dangerous situation, they're unsafe in their home, and they're not able to pay their gas bill. That is a completely different type of situation to be in, a different conversation to have to manage.
And the thing you mentioned about confidence in the downstream process is, there's a whole bunch of things I want to build on there because it's all fascinating. This was quite some time ago, and massive revelation. Probably back in 2016, I was doing some work for one of the UK's largest water companies. And they were convinced empathy was going to fix everything. But, so the agents are measured on, are you polite? Are you being personable? Are you demonstrating empathy? But sometimes it's what you're not measuring, which actually is really important. And so I did some analysis, and statistically speaking, the single biggest driver of dissatisfaction was a lack of certainty on timescales. So again, water companies, sewage and wastewater. Some quite amusing calls. Now, I'm stood in a field surrounded by raw sewage. When is your driver coming? Oh, well, we're going to be there as soon as we can, sir. How? And it was brilliant. The customer said, well, how soon is soon? And the woman went, well, I couldn't possibly say. But they're shortly, and it was brilliant. Lack of certainty on timescales. Now, in water companies, a lot of the utility firms, unlike UPS, don't own their own infield contractors, or if they do, so to fix a water leak at a water company, you need 7 or 8 contractors. One of them digs a hole, one of them looks at the leak, one of them restores the leak, one of them does the infill, then you have a grass restoration team or sort the concrete out, and then you have a barrier team who will collect the barriers. So after that, the barriers are stacked, and then a different team collects the barriers. It's bonkers. So when will those barriers be collected? As soon as we can. And it drives customers crazy. None of the speech analytics systems today that I see, NICE, Nexidia, CoreMiner, nobody is, they're just not measuring the right things. They're not measuring things like contempt. I've heard calls. So I did one piece of work where this customer had 60,000 FCA registered complaint calls. And the 2 agent behaviors that were present on 62% of all these FCA complaints were agent contempt and just powerless to resolve, powerless to help, or I called it agent intransigence. Nobody really liked that, but powerless to help. I'm so sorry, I'd love to do more, but the only thing we can do is recommend you phone Experian about your credit thing. It's not true, actually. But contempt was here. I mean, this is paraphrasing exactly. So not paraphrasing, quoting verbatim. You was the one that bought a TV you couldn't afford, and it was the fight. They did a lot on a big UK retailer that does a whole bunch of stuff on buy now, pay later, or actually, you get 6 months free interest credit and stuff. Right. You was the one that bought a TV you couldn't afford. Well, guess what? There's an ombudsman complaint for you. But crazy, when you follow the process down, and this is maybe something for another day, those behaviors don't exist. What exists then, and the people trying to resolve this complaint are often slightly more articulate than an outsourced call center. The kind of almost financial. So what they would give was a deluge of detailed financial information. Well, the £19.71 was obviously credited, but then they rolled over was £122, but then you missed the one's £13 payment, and 2 pages of A4 of just like giving numbers.
What you've just described, that situation where I can find numbers confusing at times. And someone says, you deducted the interest from the overhead and subjected the overhead cams to the power shaft. What do you expect? And I'm going, can you go back to the beginning of that? I have no idea what you've just said to me. And the explainability of what you're talking about, how you chunk that information, how you get confirmations from persons along the way, how you understand that somebody who's in a financial constraint or difficulty, they are highly cortisoled at that moment in time. They're actually not able to process as much as even their best day they would be able to do, because the constrictions of your brain are actually flooded with chemicals telling you danger, and your sight narrows, your ability to process decreases, and so again, with Webio deals in very specific, difficult to have financial conversations, credit and collections. A lot of our companies are in utilities, so we're very aware of this, and the requirement to do this is difficult to be programmatic about. But with the right process in place, what you can do is build the right intents, build the right language model, then do things like, let's watch what the full conversation looks like from both sides. Like, what's the agent saying? What's the customer saying? What's the agent saying? What's the customer saying? And start modeling for outcomes as well. But I think it would be really technically difficult to write an algorithm that could measure contempt. I'd say that one is a tough one to model.
Well, there's not. So contempt is the most corrosive behavior, 100% correlation in this company with an FCA.
And also, by the way, in just general relationships, if you want to know if a personal relationship is going to be gone, watch the level of contempt. That's the one that'll drive it.
I wrote an article called The Four Horsemen of the Customer Service Apocalypse. And so there's some incredible research in the 80s by Dr. John Gottman, who famously ran this love lab, was called, in one of the leading universities. And he would get couples to come in. I know this is a slight offshoot, but I think it's just fascinating stuff. And it would be like a little home. He would have like a one-way glass mirror. On one side, it's a mirror. On the other side, he could see through. So he's observing them. And he puts this couple in quite a difficult position, if they demonstrated, and there were 4 behaviors that statistically correlated with divorce. So he could predict with about 92% accuracy which couples would get divorced. And normally it was within about 3.5 to 5 years. And if contempt was present, it was 100% correlated. So I read this book on divorces and stuff, and I was like, this is really interesting piece of behavioral analytics. Let's see if we can pick up these behaviors. And so again, in one company, I definitely won't mention which one. You wouldn't ever expect this, but in 6% of all the CSAT-1 calls, so it's quite a low percentage, contempt was demonstrated. Little things like, yeah, so sorry, but that's not your mother's maiden name. And they go, well, of course it's my mother's maiden name. Like a password reset. Are you telling me I don't know my mother's maiden name? Well, that's not what you write in the form, sir. Contempt, right? It's basically believing the customer is an idiot or beneath you. And it's only 6% of CSAT-1 calls, which are about 1%. But when you have 14 million phone calls, that's what? It's about 30,000 instances of contempt being demonstrated. And you go, oh, hang on, we need to fix this. So it does exist in small amounts. And this particular South African outsourcer, I think in South Africa, the mentality of buy now, pay later doesn't exist. They have a concept called lay-buy or layaway. So if you want to buy a TV or a sofa, but you pay them $5 a week until you bought the TV, and then you take it home. So, and the directness of South Africans, coupled with a lack of understanding of really what buy now, pay later actually is, no surprise you got 60,000 FCA complaints. Well, I reckon 40,000, in part, it's not what went wrong, it's how you were spoken to when it went wrong. And there's research about doctors who get sued in the States. They picked surgeons who've been sued 4 or more times, really senior consultant surgeons. Then ones who'd been never ever sued. Dr. Wendy Levison in the early 80s did this real seminal piece of research. And they gave them little dictaphones at that point, and then Wendy and her team transcribed all these things. Those that were sued 4 or more times actually were better surgeons, technically, than the others. But they used jargon language. They spent, I think it was 40% less time with the grieving patients after someone had died on an operating table. They were dismissive. They broadcasted. They didn't listen. I mean, the research is fascinating, and all of that applies to customer experience conversations today. So, we could talk for hours, couldn't we?
We could, as they say. However, I think that. Yeah, I think this probably would be one of those conversations that would go on for quite a long time. I think that, we're both kind of interested in the same kind of things. I think, though, what I'd like to kind of move to the wrap here and kind of takeaways for people, Andrew, maybe you could add in if I'm missing something here. But what I'm hearing from the top here is a change program that in customer contact, again, needs people from cross organizations to work together. It's almost a truism, yet it doesn't seem to happen. The idea of customer journeys being from one channel to another or through that channel really should be carefully mapped up front, like omni-channel isn't always the best solution. If you can solve within the channel, you probably pick the right channel and get them through it would be a better outcome for them. I think that's picking up for you. I think conversational AI is one that's fraught with dangers and challenges for where you apply it and how you apply it, and the detail of that intent management and intent-based routing, and just the detail of this will really knock you for six unless you're all over it, I think. Is there anything I'm missing as well? Just takeaways, maybe at a more general level that you'd like people to focus on?
Two builds on that, really. I think there's a mindset shift required that, bolting on a piece of tech isn't really going to fix anything. It's, decision makers in these big enterprise firms have, I know you sell tech, so maybe I should say this. But,
no, that's not fine. That's why we're here.
Confirmation bias, right? Let's buy a piece of tech to fix the problem. And I think, people believe all of the spurious claims from the salespeople. So it's, people are buying tech rather than addressing, the agent conversation. So I think that's one. I think the concept of, you talked about seamless journeys and things. Big enterprise organizations, or particularly the banks, finance companies, they don't really understand. I'm not saying they don't understand it. They haven't sufficiently grasped the need for triage. And I think, believing your data as well. So I did a piece of work with a huge German insurance company for 6 months. We just had at the front of the IVR a little recorder. In your own words, please describe why you were calling today. That's it. So after 6 months, we had the absolute perfect data set to then build out chatbots, voice AI templates. And what's really interesting is when you look at that data, which was accurate, right? The IVR disposition code data was up to 40% off, right? So, if you're building anything out based on your IVR data, forget it. You're not gonna get it right. So that is a little trick that I think is really important.
That's a big one. I've also heard a similar one, which is if you have agent mark conversations. So if you ask an agent to say, what was this conversation about? That can actually be fairly inaccurate as well.
Oh, there's so if the agent is filling in a drop-down box, where was the customer located? The biggest major city at the top of the list is Aberdeen. Why are 25% of all our customers coming from Aberdeen? And I can't say which company, but we called it Aberdeen syndrome. So any agent data is garbage. I wouldn't ever look at that. And I think, having really looked at the omni-channel performance of resolving even basic requests, I've used the term omnishambles a number of times, but I don't think we're ever going to get rid of that. You can't, although a couple of, I think I mentioned a couple of deactivated WhatsApp and live chat, but most are persisting. But I think the key here is meet the customer in their channel of choice, but triage the hell out of it so you resolve it in your preferred place of preference. Back to that UPS example, right? Intent level intelligence. Every intent or intent level orchestration or resolution, you need to be doing that. And that's the single strongest recommendation I have for anybody is start doing intent level orchestration and mapping out where you want to resolve each intent. Not because you can't resolve it on Twitter or Facebook Messenger, but make sure it gets to the place where it can be resolved. And that's where companies are really getting it wrong.
Fantastic place to end it there, Andrew. The great thing, Andrew, is you've got so many years experience, but so many large clients and so many kind of critical industries that you wear your experience lightly. So I'd just like to thank you again for taking the time out to share some of that experience with us today. Point us back to the core of the problem. Pointing us back to, hey, let's look at the original data. Let's look at the the purest form of data that we can, and make our decisions based on that. So everyone, thank you again for joining us for the Credit Shift interview. It's been refreshing, and I ask you to follow this gentleman on LinkedIn, follow his amazing articles, which are real eye-openers for everyone in the industry. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you very much. All right. Catch you around, Paul.
Thanks for joining us for that amazing conversation. And remember to subscribe so you don't miss any of these future leaders talking about the changes in the credit and collections business. We'll also be pushing out weekly updates so that you get all the news as it happens in the industry. And also, why not drop into webio.com and see what we're doing these days.